Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the latest installment of MSP Business School. As always, I'm Brian Doyle, and I'm really excited to be here with y'all today. This is a topic that's becoming more and more near and dear to many MSP hearts. We're going to talk a little bit about SOC 2 and the process for that today. And I'm really excited to introduce a couple people that have been working and helping us, both over at BCIO Toolbox and Cybrance, as we start embarking on that journey as well a little bit deeper. And I want to bring them to you so that you can learn a little bit about what that looks like. So I want to welcome today from Render Compliance, I've got Beau, Bito, and I've got Angelica Mayen with me today. So I'm really excited. They've been a fun group for us to get to know over the last couple of months, and I'm excited to share them with all of you. Welcome, guys.
Thanks.
Hello.
Thanks for having us on.
All
Thank
right.
you for having us over.
You bet. So I love to kick things off first with learning a little bit about the people that are speaking and let you share a little bit about yourselves as well with them. So Angelica, I'm going to start with you. Tell me a little bit about your background and how you ended up in the world of auditing and how Render got started.
Absolutely. So yeah, my name is Angelica or Angelica. Both are correct, and I'm using them constantly because I don't even know how to say my name. I'm Polish. I came to United States in 2014 for a summer break during law school to work in Yellowstone National Park, where I met my husband and shifted my career path towards the niche world of security compliance. After I obtained my law degree, a few years later, I obtained management information system degree from University of Montana in Missoula. After college, I got a first job at Moss Adams as IT compliance, where I met Beau. And the rest is the history. as we worked together, we realized that we very much like working together, and we had some ideas we wanted to implement, and decided to start Render Compliance together.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. I'm hearing a couple things in there too. Like I did not know you also had a legal background as well. That's a little stealth. We got to watch out for you. You're the smart one, the smart and quiet one.
She's our chief legal officer.
No, awesome. I do like disgusting things.
And Beau, how about yourself? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yep. So I have a less exotic history. I grew up in Seattle, Washington, and went to school in Seattle, Washington, and now I'm living in Seattle, Washington. So I like to keep it consistent. But I started my career in financial audit and did that for a couple of years before pivoting over to auditing IT security. And worked in a couple of frameworks over the years, but definitely the bread and butter has been SOC 2 for SaaS companies, a lot of SaaS companies. And otherwise living here with my wife and our 2 kids and a dog, and making it work.
The American dream, as they say, right? But that's good stuff. Well, guys, I love hearing a little bit about the backgrounds. It allows me to get to know you a little bit better too. So thank you for that. What I'd like to talk about a little bit today is, we've seen that the MSP community is really looking at SOC 2 a little differently. Before, it was something we really just held our vendors to, right? We were looking for our vendors that we were using to have that. What we're seeing now is we're getting more and more involved with security and compliance requirements on behalf of our customers and in conjunction with our customers, that there's becoming a trend where we need to be SOC 2 as MSPs as well. And I know a lot of my, my mature MSPs have already embarked on that journey and gone down that road, but we're seeing more and more of that occurring in the industry as everybody kind of gets a little bit more educated to what that really means. But the big question that always comes up, especially as I'm talking about GRC with my clients, is, well, where do we start? I'm an MSP and I want to think, or really any company, and I want to think about obtaining a SOC 2. What are the steps I should be taking? And what are the steps where should I be engaging people to help me? Because I think that's the big question too. When do I pull on that string to get that support? So I don't know who would like to take that first.
Yeah, I could take that. Those are awesome questions to be asking. And in one way, this answer will be nothing new. Try to use the people, process, technology framework, because that's a timeless way to look at things, right? So, and yeah, I think for MSPs that are considering getting their own SOC 2 report done, that's an awesome way to learn the process and then be able to kind of turn that around as a managed offering for your clients as well too. So these principles will probably apply to both of those situations. But yeah, I like anything, like any new endeavor, start with people. Figure out, do you have someone in-house who has experience implementing SOC 2 or equivalent frameworks? So do they have that experience, and do they have the time needed to research it or organize it, etc., right? So if you don't have that person in-house, then look for a consultant. You don't have to hire a person probably full-time to do that, depending on your scope, but find a good consultant. We have a lot of great consultants we could recommend that we work with that can streamline your process there. And then this is something we were chatting about earlier, Brian, is I would say touch base, like find a good auditor early on and touch base with them early on. I think folks are hesitant to do that, like you mentioned, because you don't want to start a contract, 6 months before you have to get a SOC 2. But at least for us, and probably a lot of other auditors, we love to talk to people early on, no commitment, and just figure out what they are, what are their needs, and help them figure out, oh yeah, I need to do a SOC 2 type 1 by this day. I need to do a type 2 by this date, and just help them plan for it. So, finding a good consultant and finding a good auditor early on and communicating your needs with them consistently, that'll be huge right there.
And from that perspective, before we kind of dive in a little deeper, I think you just shared that, and I'll say my experiences in the past, and I shared it with you prior to the call, was my auditor that I had when we were running our data center concerns was great, because they shared some of the controls for us to consider, as opposed to us kind of going through the guesswork. Mm-hmm. And by doing that, it really helped us streamline the process and definitely reduce the workload, because we were thinking much, much more broadly than they were thinking. But we were also looking at things that were truly irrelevant to actual operations, but things that we figured touch security, so we better throw them in there.
Right. And that is a good point. If I can chime in.
Sure.
That is a good point. The one thing also is which I'm sure if you're working with correct people, they will definitely underline it, that we can share it with you, the templates, what makes sense, for example, for a database. But the big thing is to actually understand that on the end, those are your controls. And SOC is weird. There is not something that you have to have, unless it's a risk assessment. That's something you do need to have. Therefore, it is important to understand that on the end, those are your controls and they have to make sense for you. Because if they won't, then you won't really make sure that they are not followed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that accountability is huge. Mm-hmm. And to your point, Brian, I went through the process a while back of trying to think through, okay, if I was one of my clients implementing SOC 2 for the first time, where would I start? Where would I go? Just going on the AICP website, downloading the criteria and everything. And it's just so complex, trying to do that from scratch. You have the criteria, you have they map them to points of focus, but even that won't tell you those control statements that Angelica's talking about that you need to own for your company. You need to define for your company. So yeah, really, you need someone with experience who has gone through the audit process before, who can tell you, yeah, this is for this type of system scope. This is a standard control set that you could start with there.
And, you know, I know a lot of the MSPs that we work with are kind of standardizing on particular frameworks. A lot are either going to CMMC because they work in the government sector, or they're leaning on more broad ones like NIST's Cybersecurity Framework 2.0 or CIS version 8 as an example for really kind of building and managing their own internal controls. Can those frameworks support what we're doing and trying to achieve in SOC 2? And is that maybe a good place to kind of get at least initially organized?
Yeah, I would say definitely. If you're already tracking a control framework like that, I would say definitely start with that and just map out what are the gaps from there. I think there will probably be a few gaps. SOC 2 tends to be more high level, looking at overall organizational risk rather than super prescriptive technical controls.
Yep.
For example, SOC 2 is going to require that you have user access controls, logical access controls in certain areas, but it's not going to mandate you have to have this type of encryption on this type of server, you know, like some of the frameworks do. So I would say, yeah, if you already have one of those frameworks, start there, work with somebody to map out what are the gaps, set a timeline to remediate those gaps.
And that's probably a perfect place to engage somebody like yourselves in that early part of the process. Here's what I know. Here's what I've already been able to prove out underneath my framework assessment. Now help me understand what I got to bring to the party in order to get through this process. So,
Totally.
Probably, that's where I would see most of you as MSPs thinking about engaging, because I know you're going against things like the frameworks we talked about, or a CompTIA Trustmark, which is gaining traction in our industry as well. But there are those gaps. I know when I was looking at SOC, when we were looking at SOC, it definitely went beyond just our technical, requirements.
Yeah, totally.
Now, maybe we can segue a little bit there, right? So I'm now embarking on this SOC journey. What is the big difference between SOC 2 Type 1 and SOC 2 Type 2? That's another one that comes up often. And, what are some of the key differences between each?
Angelica, you want that one?
Yeah,
you
I
want
can
to walk
totally.
through a timeline?
Well, the difference between Type 1 and Type 2 is that Type 1 exam assesses the description and controls as of a point in time, while Type 2 is over a period of time. And a period of time, usually it would be 12 months, but it could be 9 or 6 or as little as 3 months period. Full stop. Therefore, with Type 1 exams, I didn't really see any Type 1 exams with an exception, because let's say you're working towards the having SOC 2 Type 1 attestation, and turns out you actually don't have something implemented, but you thought you did. You can just push the date and work with the auditor to push that date and implement it, and come back and do examination kind of again. And then you issue the report, because again, it's as of time, how your controls are designed. While Type 2 is how the controls are designed and how, if they are operating effectively over the period of time that happened in the past. Therefore, if the control says that the access will be for the terminated users will be removed within 24 hours, and it wasn't, therefore there is an exception, which hopefully that answers the question.
No, I think it does, because what I'm hearing here, and keep me honest, is really in Type 1 you're designing the controls so you can actually show what you're going to ultimately end up measuring, and you're going to show that those controls at least have a level of effectiveness on that date, but you're not putting any proof to that you're actually adhering to the control at that stage. am I correcting kind of that summation of level 1? And then level 2 really or type 2, excuse me, really becomes all right, now we've got the proof in the pudding. We got to run these controls for a period of time. And once we get to the end of that, we got to show that we've done them. And of course, if we missed anything along the way, the auditor is going to put that in as an exception note, and we're going to have to take corrective action.
And I think something to underline is that with type 1, we still test. Like we would still ask for your information security policy, risk assessment, for a sample of the termination of the terminated user. And we would still look at the configuration settings or proof showing that, yeah, the access was disabled within, and depending what the control says, but 24 hours, 4 hours, and so on. The thing is that we would not, with the type 2, we have a population. So let's say within the last 1 year, and the period is 12 months, you had 20 people who were terminated. We would ask, for example, for 5 samples randomly, and then we would test whether that access was removed or was not removed.
Oh, terrific. I mean, that's a great distinction because, I myself was wondering, what was the level of testing that actually occurs at type 1, or is it just strictly outlining what your controls are? Do you see people skipping type 1 and going straight to type 2 as well? Just saying, look, we know we're in it, we've got our design, and now we're going to go to, to the full compliance component, or is type 1 a requirement?
Yeah, you definitely see it. And that's always part of our conversation when clients are implementing SOC 2 for the first time, is do we start with type 1 or go straight for type 2? And so it's definitely a pros and cons in figuring out what's right for your company, because let's say you have a very mature control environment and you're confident your controls are in place. You've communicated well with your auditor leading up to it, and you just want the type 2 report in hand as soon as possible. Those are all that would be a great scenario to just skip the type 1 and go straight for the type 2. The big pro there is you save all the time and money of going through the type 1. The type 1 is often cheaper from audit fees than a type 2, but it's still going to be, maybe 80% of the 70-80% of the type 2 audit fees. So still a big lift. But conversely, what can happen there is you go straight for the type 2. The auditor comes in, 3 months later, let's say, and is looking back at that 3-month period. And let's say you were wrong, you had a whole bunch of things that you thought you were doing, you're not doing. Those will show up as exceptions on a SOC 2 report. And in that case, that's okay still. Like it's certainly common to see exceptions on a SOC 2 report. But you just have to be aware that can happen, right? And be prepared to have those conversations with your clients who are reading your report, saying, why do you have this exception? So there's
and
that.
if I can add to it, it's not only exceptions, it's also definitely heavier on your team. Like the team doesn't really know what to expect. They might have experience, but and yeah, even if they do have experience and they know how the process would look like it's a new company, it's a new controls, it's a new organization, it's a new system. Therefore, there is no requirement to do type 1 before type 2, but it makes sense to do
it could be just a good best practice, because especially if you're early in the process, right, to get yourself established and know that you've got the right controls in place and have somebody validate that. You could see a very strong need for type 1, but certainly if you've been doing it for 10 years and your controls are mature and what your outcomes that you're expecting are, really just the new controls that come up as things evolve that might be a little bit more challenging at that stage. You touched upon something else too about the exceptions that's intriguing to me, because obviously the goal for this is really to prove trust, right? That's a big part of why we go through this process with our end user customers. And if you've got, while everybody will have some level of exceptions, some exceptions carry more weight than others. Some exception, too many exceptions can turn somebody off. And, we used to joke when I was in the data center world, it was as much a marketing experience as it was a controls and trust experience for us. Because if, it was kind of that rubber stamp when people were coming to our data center, are you SOC 2 type 2? Yes. Okay, good. That checks the box. So I think those that are looking at those reports, if you've got a SOC 2 type 2, but you've got too many exceptions, it can still cost you. It can cost you the opportunity to work with some people, I'm sure.
Right. Yeah, we were just speaking with a prospective client this morning who was basically asking, so how bad is it to get an exception on your SOC 2 report? And yeah, it definitely depends on who your report readers are. Some industries are going to, like you said, take those more seriously than others. Some people are just going to look at that as a red flag, even that you have an exception. Some are going to look at it as a completely normal thing. It just depends, right?
Yep.
But yeah, I would say in general, it is normal to get some testing exceptions. You see that on the SOC 2 reports for the biggest software providers out there. Sometimes like Microsoft or Amazon, their auditors will find exceptions, and it's a very normal part of the process. The testing will show up for 2 out of 20 sampled users or sampled accounts or whatever it is. This was not enabled. That will be the finding, right? And then management will have a chance on the report to explain the context around that, or their mitigating actions, what they did after the finding was uncovered to fix the process, etc. So yeah, I think it's a normal part of the process to get some of those minor exceptions. You could get but yeah, then there are more. I was explaining to our prospective customer, as the auditor, we evaluate everything through the lens of risk, right? And so there are some exceptions that are worse and could end up. So what we're doing through the SOC 2 report is giving our opinion, right? And a good opinion is an unqualified opinion, meaning, yes, your system is operating as you described it. But a bad opinion is basically could be a modified or a qualified opinion saying, in this area, your system did not operate as you described it, consistent with these criteria. And so if there are some of those significant exceptions, let's say, for example, you just don't have a process to remove access for terminated employees, right? Let's just say you leave everyone with access after they leave the company. That would be bad. That would be something that we would say would qualify our report opinion. So yeah, that's kind of a overall summary there, I think.
So less is more when it comes to audit. If you're getting simple replies, that's what the expected is. If there has to be any color commentation added to it, you've probably got something that might be a little at least loose from a controls perspective.
Right.
Cool. So, we're getting near the end of our time, but I do have one other thing that I would love to, get your feeling for. People talk a little bit about the timing of this and what that lift and burden is going to look like. And of course, the big thing out there, what is the average cost of doing this process from an external factor standpoint? Maybe those are some things you can share. I'm sure they range based on size and complexity of customers, but what does an engagement look like? What should somebody expect in terms of time and duration?
So I can take that question from the point of timeline. So our process is designed that it would, on average, take around 9 weeks from the time when we meet with the client, define the scope, assuming that the client has already the list of controls created. From defining the scope, the client provides us with the list of controls. Based on that, we create the list of evidence that we need to test those controls. Then we meet with the client during the field work week for around 8 to 12 hours, depending again of the complexity and what is within the scope, where we talk with the control owner of each control to understand the process and to be able to test each of the control. After that, within 2 weeks from the field work, we provide to the client the draft report. And as we have a mutual agreement there, we issue the report around 9 weeks from where the process started. Anything to add there, Beau?
No, yeah, just speaking to the other aspect of that question, kind of closing the loop on, we covered people. That was a lot about the process, and then you're supposed to wait until you've defined those two things to look at technology, right? That's best practice. So yeah, hopefully you've defined your requirements, you've defined your people, and then you can look at what's the best technology platform to get this done. And there's a lot of good options out there. I mean, yeah, there's everything from, you can be successful using Excel and tickets to like a fully automated evidence collection system that's designed for frameworks like SOC 2. I mean, yeah, that's, you didn't ask for a product plug here, Brian, but that's like something that your tool can greatly, your platform can greatly aid you in, is keeping everything in one place, organized, getting tasks to the right owners for each type of action, right? So yeah, after you define that, then you can look at the tech stack.
Perfect.
And
so,
answering the other question that you asked, it was about pricing, right?
Yeah, just kind of a ballpark, knowing it changes.
We actually are pretty transparent, and we put our pricing on the website. It can start from, it obviously depends of the size of the business, complexity, numbers of controls, maturity program, and so on. But it would start from 16,000 for SOC 2 Type 1 up till 40,000 for SOC 2 Type 2.
Terrific. So that gives everybody kind of a sense out in the marketplace of what that effort will cost you. Certainly, numbers vary everywhere, but that's in line with what we were paying previously. So, it seems to be pretty standard throughout the industry. Well, Beau, Angelica, I really appreciate you guys coming on. To find Beau and Angelica, you can go to rendercompliance.com. And when you're there, make sure you go to the resources section, rendercompliance/resources. They've got a lot of great material to help you get started and get organized as you embark on your Type 2 as well. As always, we'll be putting their LinkedIn profiles with all of our notes that go with our videos up on YouTube, and of course, anywhere that you download your podcast from as well. I want to thank both of you for joining me today. I'll stop here and just ask any closing thoughts before we say goodbye.
Yeah, no, thanks very much for having us on. Definitely feel free to reach out with any questions. If maybe you're getting this going as a product offering for your MSP, we'd love to just be a resource for you. Again, no commitment. Feel free to reach out and ping us with any questions.
Absolutely. As you noticed, we love talking about boring SOC 2 reports. So reach out to us anytime, and we will be happy to help. So thank you so much, Brian, for having us.
And just remember this, boring is only to the beholder, right? What you guys talk about is very interesting to me. What I talk about is not interesting to my mother at all. So, it's all about your audience. Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate you joining me today. And it's always been a pleasure working with you. Looking forward to doing more of it.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.